Today we welcome to the show Mountaineer business executive Chris Klinke. Chris was a VP for a large Fortune 500 financial services organization and is currently president of Trango Corporation. After walking away from his life in Michigan, he chose to pack his bags and travel the world. After a year of adventure, he decided it wasn't enough, and that's when he chose to experience the world from the tallest mountain, Mount Everest. After 7 years of guiding some of the world's largest mountains, he realized he could combine his everlasting passion for the mountains while building a career with his business knowledge. Let's talk adventure and business on this episode of Crackin Backs.
All right, Chris. Well, it's an honor to have you on the show. I've heard a lot about you from my buddy's girlfriend, I guess we can now say on air, and she just thinks the world of you. And
Wait,
and
that's
she's
news to me. I gotta hear more.
well, that's if Dr. Dr. Sloda,
Yes.
and yeah, and she is she's absolutely amazing. But one of the things that she brought to our attention was you're a member of two really elite clubs, and one of them is you're an executive president of a large company, and that's a very unique club that not a lot of people in the world are. But the thing that got me going was you're a member of the Top of the World Club, and that is a very rare club. And for those that are listening, the Top of the World Club is members of those who have summited the highest mountain in the world, which is Everest, and you've done it more than once. And so that got me kind of going. But what I really liked was the parallel between the boardroom and the mountains, and what drew you to the excitement of that world.
So I was at a financial services company for about 15 years, and I did make my way up the ladder. I was a VP at the company, and was managing about $5 billion in assets, and I realized I had been climbing the entirely wrong ladder. I was
good metaphor.
I was working 80 hours a week, and I wasn't finding much joy in it. And when I realized that one of the things that I was most happy about was figuring out how to get more money to nonprofits in Detroit, I realized that's probably in the wrong business.
Yeah.
So, when I was young, when I was 12, there was like one of those hot, nasty Michigan summers, and my friend had air conditioning, and we were driving his mom crazy, and she's like, "Okay, make a list of goals." And I actually stumbled across that list when I was 25, like 13 years later, when I'm cleaning out boxes for my mom's house, and there's a long list of stuff on it, and one of them was have a Porsche, one of them was have a pool, because I'd watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High, so I thought anybody who owned a pool that would happen to. And if you don't know the reference, you're too young. If you do know the reference, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Have a dog. Be a millionaire by 30. All this stuff. And the one goal on there that I had really hadn't looked at all. I had focused on the rest, and I decided I didn't want a Porsche because I couldn't put my bikes on it. I didn't want a house with a pool because I didn't want to deal with it. But there was one goal on there, which was climb Mount Everest. And that goal kind of started resonating with me. And I was about 25, and I took a course, where I was working, I had 6 weeks of vacation a year, but I could only take really about a week without it hurting my career, so to speak. And so when I got promoted, I negotiated having 5 weeks, and I went and took a NOLS course and went to the Himalaya and climbed in the Himalaya and got dengue fever. And then I rode a donkey for 3 days, was hallucinating. Oh God, it was great. It was a lot of fun having dengue fever in the wild. There's too many funny details on that one just to move on. The guy who was the lead guide, who was the head trainer for Knowles, he was a guy by the name of Job, and he did have the patience of Job because he stayed up with me for about 3 days as I was hallucinating, going in and out of 104 fever, vomiting, diarrhea, all simultaneously in the middle of nowhere in the Himalaya. And the guy was super patient, super gracious through the whole process, right? And then he's like, well, we got to get you out of here. I'm like, no, I'm not going. He's like, no, we got to get you out. I'm like, no, I'm not going. So then he got me a donkey and let me ride a donkey for 3 days to feel better, to stay on the trip. And again, Job was amazing. He kind of inspired me in a lot of things. And we went up and we got into the glacier and we spent 4 weeks climbing on snow. Didn't shower for 3.5 weeks. That was a first for me at 25. It's a long time not to shower. We would try to summit a peak called Nandakaini, which is a 23,000 meter peak, and we got up high. We got up about to 19,000, and one of our teammates got haze, so we put her in a Gamoff bag, and she was in a Gamoff bag for 24 hours, and then we short roped her down the mountain. We got her down, and she was better, and then we were like, let's go back up, and the monsoon came in, and there's no going back up, and then so the trip was over, but in that process, I had learned so much more about myself in that 4.5, 5 weeks than I'd ever thought I would. And I kind of got hooked. And so I stayed in the financial services, and I got, every time I got promoted or figured it out, I was able to negotiate time to go climb.
That's awesome.
And, what was funny is I didn't have a lot of success. My first mountain, Nanda Devi, I didn't succeed. My second mountain, Denali, I didn't succeed. We spent 8 days at high camp at 17.2 because of 70 plus mile an hour winds. Mm-hmm. And we were running out of food. And so we had to make the decision to bail. Tried a couple 14ers and got blown off of those as well out in Colorado. And I was like, God, I'm just not having any luck, So when I was about 34, I made the decision. Funny enough, that's when I met Dr. Slota, Karen. I met her about 3 years before I quit through mutual friends of ours. And I called her my goddess of pain because anytime I hurt myself, she figured out how to make it better.
Right. She has the opposite effect with Spencer. She'll actually cause the pain. Yes.
Well, she brings the pain, but then you feel better a little bit later.
Yeah, he'll probably say
after. Right.
I mean, she's great. She was, and I just to give her a shout out. I mean, she has brought me back from about 4 major injuries in about 3 appointments. She's amazing. She's great.
Yeah, she is.
She's really good at what she does. And anyway, so that she asked me to be on the show. That's why she whenever I need her, she's there. So
that's awesome.
Anyway, when I went to go leave American Express, which was in 2004, 2005, I made a plan. I decided I was going to try and climb one 8,000 meter peak. And so I booked a trip with an American company to go to Choyu. That trip got canceled 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave. I had bought an around the world ticket, this whole 9 yards. It was kind of a weird story. So I started scrambling to try to find a backup trip. And I came across a company out of New Zealand, a guy named Jamie McGinnis, who is also an awesome, amazing human. And he ran a company called Explore Himalaya. And he had a trip going to Shishapangma. And he's like, well, if you have success on Shishapangma, then you can try and go back to Choyu. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good plan. And so I went on that trip. We got to the fall summit of Shishapangma, which is 2 meters lower than the true summit, but about 200 meters away. The difference is from fall summit to true summit is a huge avalanche slope. And we did take 3 steps out and listened to go whoop, whoop, and said, nope, turned her out. Said, fall summit's good enough for us today. Went down, and then I went over to Choyu and tried to summit Choyu. And with that, when I got up on Choyu, I literally hiked 20 miles out from Shishapangma Base Camp, drove 85 miles across the Tibetan Plateau, started hiking up 15 miles to Shoyu Base Camp, went to Camp 2 the next day, and then we tried to go for the summit. And as we were trying to go for the summit, we're trying to beat a window. Winds came up, 70 plus mile an hour winds at Camp 3 at 7.2 maybe? 7.3? I don't remember how high it is. And I made the call to turn around and go down. And with that transition kind of started my whole climbing career, and we can talk about that more. But to go back to your original question of how did the boardroom and climbing come together, it was about goal setting. And it's that really simple thing of have a goal, have a plan, work the plan, throw off discouragement, achieve the goal.
There you go.
It's not more complicated, right? It's because everything
Chris,
there's going to be something that's going to make you discouraged and make you not be able to hit your goal. So,
Chris, you mentioned earlier about your goals. You had a list, and you had all these, accoutrements of life that you aspired to have. And then you have this climb Mount Everest goal. So I'm going to bring you back to when you were a kid and you used to climb rocks and boulders and crash big wheels. There's a song by One Republic called "I Lived," where they say that with every broken bone, I lived. Would you say this song reflects your childhood?
I didn't break any bones in my childhood. That was a funny thing. But my mom,
later on.
So again, keep in mind, I was born in the late '60s, so I was a '70s child. So big wheels were my thing. My mom always tells the story of she had to start going to different ERs with me because I was going to the ER like once a week because I was out doing stupid stuff, right? And that's before like CPS, like they track that stuff. She's like, I was afraid they're going to take you away because every week you're getting stitches or getting a CT scan or getting an X-ray. Right. Like, I mean,
that's great.
I totaled, I think, 2 big wheels by the time I was 6.
We have a very similar childhood. I was in the ER probably once or twice a month, and for I was the guy that everybody would go, I wonder if this is possible, and let's get Terry to try it. And I had the guts to try it. I just didn't have the athletic ability to pull it off. So I was always wrecking myself. I have to ask the question. So in 1986, Dick Bass wrote the book, 7 Summits.
Yep.
And then Krakauer wrote the book In the Thin Air and almost 10 years later. And that sparked a lot of the world of climbing and got people a lot interested. Is that book, since when you were born, is that 7 Summits kind of what started your quest for the 7 Summits, or was it something else?
It was Reinhold Messner in National Geographic in 1980.
Okay.
Ooh. So Messner had climbed Everest without oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the piece. And again, that's, that was the year before. And that magazine, my dad, subscribed to National Geographic. I read it cover to cover, not only because of the naked pictures, but also because there was good stories, as a kid, right? And yeah, I know, Spencer. Right? Everybody did. There's always something there, right?
There's always
something to find. And you're always disappointed when it was just fish.
Yeah.
It's just a fish episode. Damn it. Anyway, long story short is it was that article. Funny enough, I mentioned that article a lot. I don't even know if it was 1980, but I know National Geographic did the whole thing about him summiting Everest without oxygen, which I believe was 1980. And that's when, I ended up going to Everest for the first time in 2006. When I was on my Knowles course, one of the people I was hiking with was best friends with Scott Fisher and had been to K2 with Scott Fisher, trekked into base camp, was best friends with one of the people on the 96 expedition, 3 of the people on the 96 expedition, knew all of them. And so that happened I was on that trip in 97. No, I was on that trip in 96. So right after it happened, no, 97, spring of 97. So it was a year later that I was on the Knowles trip. So all of that was still super fresh. And Krakauer's book hadn't even come out yet, which is really funny. Because it would just, and so I was talking to my friend about that I met on this trip, and so we were going through the entire thing. What's interesting is, and I will say this: Krakauer tells a great story. How much of that is based in reality, I don't know. I wasn't there, but having been part of many books at this point, every tragedy is the car wreck scenario with 3 people standing on 4 different corners, or 4 people standing on 4 different corners, seeing 4 completely different things. Right. And so it's really hard to say. What I will say is, I think Krakauer told a great story. I think Anatoly's book, The Climb, about that was a lot more factual and less interpretive. But I think the biggest inspiration for me was Reinhold Messner. And I had the pleasure of meeting Reinhold Messner 3 times now. Once in 2012 and twice in 2013. Out in Kathmandu and at Everest Base Camp, actually. So
that's
he
cool.
hung out in our tent for a while. Interesting.
You mentioned, yeah, he is. You mentioned K2, and for a lot of people listening, they're so focused always on Everest, and they don't realize that K2 is actually the hardest mountain in the world to climb. And you were on that mountain leading the team, and you decided to turn back.
Yep.
And the remaining teams kept going and hit some avalanches. What is it that made you make that decision? And let's kind of bounce back in business. And have you come up with that thought process in business where you have your goals, but you also have your safe exits and your safe goes, and what made you make that decision?
Yeah. Well, and again, let me kind of step back, because I right now I run a climbing company. We make climbing equipment, Trango. So that is, I left the financial world and followed something that I actually enjoyed.
There you go.
And that's the business I run now. And so we make and manufacture climbing equipment. So harnesses, carabiners, ropes, helmets, rock protection, all of that fun stuff. And with that, yeah, there's a lot of times at this point we go down that path, and we have to hit the brakes, because it's PPE, personal protection equipment. People's lives depend on whether or not the gear works. And so you have a concept, oh, this is going to be great. Maybe not, And
right.
So you got to go through that testing process. And the same thing happened on K2. Is we're going up to the summit on K2. Just to kind of give a little background for your listeners, if you haven't read anything or any of those things, it was in 2008, and there was 24 people, I believe, who left for the summit at the same time on 6 different teams speaking 8 different languages. And we had all been stuck in base camp for about 2.5 weeks because of severe weather. And on the way up to Camp 4, we're coming up from 2 different routes, the Abruzzi and the Sasan. And our goal was to all meet up there on the 31st of July, or 30th of July. Wait, how many days does July have? 30? Last day of July. Anyway, I don't remember. That's the altitude. We'll just go with altitude. And we got up there. Everybody got up there, and we realized that 2 of the people who were critical, who were bringing a lot of the gear, got sick at Camp 2 and turned around, and nobody brought their gear up. So we were short of equipment for fixing. And because it's the first time we had all planned, like multiple teams had planned a summit attempt on K2. K2 wasn't a commercial mountain. It was still a wild mountain, right? There was like 75 people in base camp that were climbing, which was a lot. In perspective, you go to Everest Base Camp right now, and there's going to be almost 1,400 people at base camp.
Right.
So big differences, right? Big difference. And so when I got up into the bottleneck, we were 3.5 hours late leaving. I was trying to summit K2 without oxygen. And, there was a whole strategy that we had between the teams of those people who were climbing with oxygen were going to be out leading and breaking more trail. And those climbing without oxygen were going to kind of be like in the middle and to the back and trying to, just support everybody up ahead. And I mean, it was all discussed and, planned out ahead of time, trying to give everybody the best chance of success and with the highest margin of safety. Me and three of my other teammates had headed out about 3 a.m. Two of my teammates turned around about 4 a.m. because they were just looking up and seeing it was a mess. And we were not moving as fast as we were going to move. And they're going to wait for another day and wait till the next day to go up, get a little bit more rest and recovery. And me and my friend Searing continued to push up. And I got to Heart Rock about 8,300 meters on K2 out of 8641. And I'm looking down. It is super hot. It was a super hot day, super hot. It was the first nice day that we had on the mountain in almost 3 weeks. So it had been snowing, it had been blowing. At Camp 3, we had 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. So snow drifts and blowing happening, avalanche loading, all of those things were occurring, right? So this was the first nice day. And if you spend any time in the mountains, that first bluebird day after a big storm series, it's gorgeous, but you hear things crashing everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't happen in the high altitude because there's no trees for things to crash off of. But what you did start to see is you saw snow sliding, the little snow pockets sliding as things consolidated. Nobody was digging Abbey pits, on the side of K2. But the thing that finally flipped my switch, one was a series of emails I had with Ed Vestiers, and who is the first American to do all 14 8,000 meter peaks. And a line from one of his books, from his book, the mountain he regretted the most was K2. He made it, but he knew he made some bad decisions in doing it. Mm-hmm. Because he was just summit fever, summit happy. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching snow melt on rock at 8,300 meters. I never seen that. Ever. I've been up above 8,000 meters quite a few times by that point. Never see snow melting, even at 7,000 meters on rock. And, this is that back lizard brain going. And I think these may or may not have been conscious thoughts. And I don't remember if I discussed them with some of the other people that were around me at the time. But I just kept thinking, what happens tonight when this freezes? That all consolidates. That top layer becomes super heavy. We know there's a slide layer underneath.
Right.
Where we were climbing up, it was 2 to 3 feet of sugar snow with blue ice underneath. That's what was taking everybody so long, is it was so hard to move up and to set anchors in that type of environment.
Right.
And so we'd been sitting there for an hour as the lead team is trying to set anchors up through what's known as the bottleneck. And it just didn't seem right. It just felt off for me. So I spent some time and talked to Searing. Searing was trying to become the first Nepali to summit without oxygen. Summit K2 without oxygen. Him and a guy named Pemba were the two Sherpas who were going up for that. And Pemba was coming from another team, from the Dutch team, and was coming up the Sasan, but they were both part of that team going up right there. And Searing and I tried to get Searing to turn. No, I want to keep going. So I made the decision to turn around, and this was about 10:30 in the morning, maybe 11. And by the time I got back down to Camp 4, I literally had sat down in the tent, turned around and looked up. And that is when Dren Maldick fell to his death trying to pass somebody going up. And so it was the start. And in the next 24 hours, 11 people passed away. So
yeah, some of those things you were mentioning, I was getting kind of shivery when you were talking about the blue ice and all that. I was kind of getting a little. You kind of read that stuff. One of the things that you brought up in that is Ed Viesturs, who's one of my heroes actually, and he got really known for a long time as the guy that turned around for more summits than he made, and so I gotta ask you, because from your point of view, people nowadays get so focused on the short-term prize and they forget about the long-term effects. And in mountaineering, it's deadly. In life, it also is deadly. It's just not as in your face deadly. Why do you think people do this? What have you learned in the mountains to kind of overcome that?
The thing I talk about a lot is climbing expeditions is very much like being on deployment in the military. In that there are long periods of boredom with short, intense periods of activity where there's a high likelihood you could die. It's, I spent a lot of time. I had a really good friend who ran a nonprofit called American 300 that went out and did resiliency training on bases. And in talking to our soldiers in various places, that is the hardest thing in the world, is you are always at a constant state of ready, but you're bored 23 and a half hours a day. It's hard. I mean, it's a hard place to be. And so the thing I try and teach people the most is patience. And whether it's in the business world or in the climbing world, you got to have patience, but you got to balance that patience out with the drive, right? You have to keep your eye on the goal. One of the big things that I've seen, I've been fortunate enough to be, I think I've spent over 2 years on expedition now at this point in my life. One of the things I've been able to see is with pretty good accuracy who's going to summit and who's not on a team, on my teams usually, because the people who are going to summit are the people who are there to climb the mountain. The people who are not going to summit are those who are trying to figure out their life or figure out we're using this as the man on the mountain scenario. Let's go climb a mountain because that's going to help me figure out what I should do next. That never happens.
That's great. Yeah.
I've had a couple of expeditions where literally 2 people were trying to figure out whether they should stay in their relationships, right? Guess which 2 people did it's really, somebody else had a whole plan of the last time they didn't summit was everybody else's fault, and so there's a blame game, and he wants to blame others. That's really easy to do, but that's not going to help you get to the summit this time.
Yeah.
So for all of this, you need to be able to focus on what is it that you're actually looking at, what is it you actually want to do, and be there for what you're actually there for. And recognize that the biggest challenge you're going to have is patience and overcoming boredom.
Yeah. Delayed gratification, always key. That's great.
Think about whether you're running a sports team, whether you're running a business. You have to have that patience to do the same thing day in and day out to get ready to do whatever it is you're trying to do. I'm watching my significant other's kid. He turns 21 in a week and a half, and he's playing football, D3 football. But he has been going to the weight room religiously since he was 15, every day.
Yeah.
That type of patience pays off. That type of hard work pays off.
Love that.
I mean, I hate going into the gym. I'm like, I'll go run for 2 hours rather than go to the gym for 20 minutes. That's just how I'm wired, right? It's just like, I'm not a weight man. I'm like, I blew out my shoulder when I was like 19 playing lacrosse, and anything above 140 pounds, it always pops out. It's like, so I don't lift. But then you look at it and go, okay, there's so many other ways to train, and but again, it's that patience, it's that focus on what the goal is, and helping people stay there. And if you can do that, you can succeed. Is my thought process.
That's consistency. I love that. Consistency always wins.
It does.
Chris, we're going to kind of amp things up here and inject a little adrenaline in your system here by going through what we traditionally refer to as our rapid fire questions. They require, brief answers because there's 5 of them, and we're going to run right through them. But I will tell you, we always get caught up in listening to a little bit more of the story, so don't feel restrained or anything. But if you're ready for rapid fire question 1, let me know. Thumbs up.
Hit it.
Ready? Okay. Chris, this is your chapter, your book. What would you say is the name of both the book and the chapter?
Learning how to have fun again.
That's
learning how to have fun.
That's the title of the book?
That's the title of the book. Because one of the things I'm finding is as I get older, I want to do all the things I did, but sometimes you just can't. Like I used to be able to climb 5'11", 5'12". Now I'm pretty happy if I do 5'10",
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, we don't want our fingers to pop anymore, right?
Yeah, like I literally went bouldering with 2 of the best boulderers in the world, Chris Sharma and a kid named Drew Rowana, about 2 months ago. And I'm just boot scooting down a boulder and my pinky gets trapped in a rock. I haven't been able to climb. Like it popped. It just popped. Nothing broken. Just popped. Just like, just went that wrong way. Relocated itself. Hurts like a mother. Like I haven't been, but I get to say I was bouldering with 2 of the best boulderers in the world. I didn't climb a stitch, but that's where I hurt myself. So
hey, a little reference, Spencer. Chris Sharma used to glue quarters on his wall and could climb up the wall just by gripping a quarter.
Come on.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
So Google Drew Rowana when you get a chance. Ruana. He's one of Trango's athletes. The kid sent 3 V16s last year.
Holy shit.
Lifetime total now is 9 or 10. He's one of the 3 best boulderers in the world.
Hey, Chris, can you explain to my bridge climbing partner what a V16 is?
Impossible.
I live in Florida.
Impossible.
I live in Florida,
Yeah,
Chris.
it's impossible.
What is it?
I think there's 6 people in the world who have now done a V16. So V16 basically refers to a boulder. 9 times out of 10, you're starting out underneath, you're hanging upside down, and you are clinging to something. Let me find something. Maybe no bigger than this paper edge with your fingertips and your toes. I'm not kidding. Drew's biggest issue is always he runs into he tears his skin, and it's always on his index finger or his thumb. Sometimes it's on his middle finger, and the reason is he is holding. I mean, the kid weighs $105 maybe, but he's holding all his body weight on that little 1 centimeter square inch of skin, right? Skin is not designed for that type of force. It tears.
Yeah.
It shreds.
That's
It's
wild.
wild. It's wild to see the injuries he gets from putting just pressure. It's crazy. But yeah, it's insane. It's insane, Spencer. I've been out a couple classes and I just like my mind gets blown every time.
That's incredible.
Wow. Question number 2, Chris. You ready? When you are deep in a corporate world, your best exercise to keep you in mountaineering shape would be what?
Running every day.
Ah, very good. A jog or a sprint?
I run every day at lunch. I do.
Fantastic.
One of my VP is actually a runner as well. And so him and I go out and do our chats while we're running.
Oh, that's great.
So last year, his wife kind of hates me because I made him do the Highland Fling last year in Scotland, which was a 53-mile ultra race up Loch Lomond.
Oh.
So, and then the year before that, I made him do the rim to rim to rim on the Grand Canyon. So,
ooh, now you're talking my language. That's cool.
That's impressive.
Yep.
Question number 3. Dealing with people. That's, part of the workload and part of the play load here. Would you prefer the ones on the side of a mountain or members of a board of directors?
Mountain every time.
I kind of expected that.
Well,
question number 4.
I want to elaborate.
Go ahead.
I think this is important.
Yeah.
When you're on the side of a mountain, everybody there has made some of the same choices, same sacrifices, and has the same goal. When you're in a boardroom, that is not the case.
That's a great metaphor.
And so if you can get with like-minded people who have the same desire, passion, and are willing to make those same choices and sacrifices to be there, that's a tribe you want to, that's your tribe.
Terry, we gotta definitely highlight that.
That was great.
That is perfect for the listeners and the audience here. Very good. Very good. Question number 4. Simple. Favorite mountaineering food?
Bacon.
I thought that would be easy.
Bacon.
Bacon?
Ready
really?
Bacon to Camp 3. On Camp 4 on the South Col of Everest in 2013, I had a team of 13 people that was going for the summit and then plus Sherpas. I carried 2 pounds of bacon up for breakfast before we headed out. And I think I had every person on South Col like, bacon? Bacon?
No shit.
Just that smell coming off, man. Vegetarians became meat eaters. Vegans were like, oh my God, give me some bacon.
You carry 2 pounds of bacon up Everest. That is freaking awesome.
Terry, you got a favorite food?
Mine was animal crackers.
Animal crackers?
That'll do.
But you had the simple sugars up there just to get yourself a quick high. But I would have tossed that in a heartbeat because I wasn't willing to carry 2 pounds of bacon up a mountain. But that would win in a heartbeat.
I carried it for the team.
You're a man.
I didn't need a whole 2 pounds, but
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is great.
And then my miracle food is after summit. I always bring a Coke and a Snickers.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So you come down, you get the sugar and caffeine.
Yeah.
That gets me moving out of high camp and going down to lower camps.
There you go.
Yeah.
Snickers is my go-to. They would just get really frozen midday. That's awesome.
Yeah, you just sleep in your sleeping bag. It's good.
What you put down? Yeah, you put in warm spots of your body.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Is that a Snickers?
All right.
Glad to see me.
Anyway. Is that the jumbo size or is that the mini size?
Oh, look at the mini. Anyway. Okay.
Last and final question, Chris. Favorite climbing movie? I have a funny feeling it's not Cliffhanger.
I don't have one.
Ooh. There's a lot of them out
There's
there,
a lot
though.
of them out there.
There's a
There's
lot
a
of
movie that I'm in called a Cry from the Top of the Moon. I have decided I stopped watching them. I stopped reading climbing books.
How come? Really?
Yeah.
How come? They're boring
No.
compared to what you lived?
It comes back to part of it's, and this sounds really egotistical, been there, done that. But it also comes back to what I was talking about when we were talking earlier. Having been involved in a couple different incidents on the mountain, having that perspective, I don't want to hear somebody else's interpretation of somebody else's story. Is kind of how it comes down for me. It doesn't mean there is nothing to be gained or that they're not inspirational or any of those things. Like I watched Don Wall and Free Solo, again, those are great climbing movies. I think Don Wall and Free Solo, which came out in like 2015, 2016 with Alex Honnold and was in one on the Yosemite, and Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgensen on the Don Wall. Those mainstream climbing in a way, rock climbing in a way that had never been done before. So those things I think are super transformational. But in terms of watching mountaineering movies, not into it.
What about 14 Peaks?
I haven't watched it.
Oh. You need to watch that one.
Everybody keeps telling me to, and The Alpinist is the other one everybody keeps telling me to watch.
I liked 14 Peaks better than The Alpinist. Alpinist is you'll pick Alpinist apart, but the 14 Peaks you'll sit there and go, wow.
Well, that's with that's the one with Nima Dai.
Yeah.
Dai?
Yeah.
He did Everest. I know he's a super inspirational guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think what I got out of that one is what he did to his body and what he was able to do while dealing with his mother. So I thought that was interesting. His mother was sick and dying, and he had to put that aside to get some stuff done. And it was fascinating.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Chris, I have a question for
Sure.
you. We understand, well, the question starts with, do you follow avalanches or do avalanches follow you? Because I need you to tell us about a snowboarding trip to Lake Tahoe with Beth and Dennis back in 2010. Tell me what happened.
There wasn't an avalanche.
What?
That was an idiot.
Did you happen to lose them anywhere along the way?
No, I didn't lose them. We got up on a peak. I don't even know where we were at. Honest to God, I don't even remember anymore. I know I teased Beth about it endlessly. But we were up on a peak. Her and Dennis were with me, and they were both snowboarding. They were the knuckle draggers. Yeah, boarding isn't a thing. Anyway, I'm gonna get shot. She sat down and threw her board down because we hiked up. We hiked up somewhere, and she threw her board down, and her board just decided to go down the mountain as it should, out of bounds, and went about 3/4 of a mile. So then Dennis and I went down to get her board. But again, there's no way from where we were to get back up. And so then we were breaking trail all the way back up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
and Beth had to buy drinks for the entire week.
As she should. They're always sitting down. These boarders are always sitting down.
Picture of Dennis passed out after one of those nights of drinking. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. If you know them, ask them to see that picture.
Oh, that's great. There's a lot of parallels to doing what you do. One can draw a metaphor with the so-called dead people we encounter in life, or those that are left behind on a mountain. What is your opinion with those who just exist versus those that thrive?
I think we all go through different periods where that happens, though. Going back to your earlier metaphor, it's funny you said it's your book, it's your chapter. That is something my dad had been telling me since I was like 5. When I went to get advice from my dad, he said, "Oh, it's your book, your chapter. You got to make that." I'm like, "No, I just want you to tell me what to friggin' do." But nope, never did. But with that whole thing is, I think it is that stress and recovery period that everybody needs to go through. If you're going to grow, if you're going to grow muscle, if you're going to grow in an ability or a skill, you have to stress yourself out and you have to give yourself a period of recovery. I think one of the biggest challenges people have is they don't give themselves the grace to have recovery and to get better and to take the time. So yeah, pushing through and pushing all the time, that can go for a while. But you also have to have that ability, have the grace to be able to sit back and go, you know what? Now's my downtime, and that's okay. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna get a little thicker on the middle for the next 3 months because my body hurts. It's okay. Those things are okay, and being okay with not always pushing the edge, that's okay too. But I know, and I'll bring this back. My significant other, her name is Julie. She's a health counselor and all these other fun things in life. And she just always looks at me and goes, "Your level of risk acceptance is so completely different than anybody I know." Right? And I think that's the piece where accepting the risk of what you're doing allows you to have that grace to sit back and have that patience and accept others who aren't risk takers, who have risk aversion. Everybody's dealing with their own stuff from the last 30 years, right? It doesn't matter, or last 2 years, or last 30 days, and processing that stuff is hard.
Risk acceptance. Yeah. That's another takeaway for me. Thank you. I love that. I love that because that really puts people on gradients of where they're at versus where they want to be and who takes those risks. Thank you. That was cool.
You know what, Chris, what a lot of people don't understand especially about good climbers such as yourself, is why would you turn around from a summit when you can see it? It's only 200 meters in front of you. And what they don't realize at altitude, that 200 meters can take you several hours. Yep. But they'll see it and they're like, "But it's right there. Well, why did you turn around?" And I would just go for the summit. But we turn around so we can climb another day, and to me, and I'm sure you too, it's not so much the summit, it's the journey to get there. And what are some of the lessons you would like to leave our audience about those lessons you have learned by both summiting and turning around?
I think the biggest takeaway is know what your goals are. And I've done presentations on risk. I've done all these different presentations, but know what your goals are. There are some people who say, "My goal is the summit." That has never been my only goal. My goal is the summit and come home. That second part is pretty damn important to me.
Yeah.
I do know people who have been willing to just summit and take the risk to go because for whatever reason, that's not a sustainable model for most. So for me, when I go back to the risk, it's the risk acceptance. What level of risk are you willing to accept in your everyday life? What level of risk are you willing to take riding? What is the objective risk? What is the subjective risk? I live out here. I mean, I'm fortunate. I live out here in Front Range of Colorado. There's some amazing biking and some amazing stuff. I stopped riding on roads. The level of risk of the number of people I know who've been hit by a car in 1 year, it was like 9 people within 6 months. I don't know that many people to be hit by a car. I'm just gonna ride. I bought a gravel bike. I switched it up. I'm off the roads because the people, I don't have control of what other idiots are doing on the road, right? But I can control where I ride. But again, on a mountain, it's the same thing. Is you see the summit, and you know, if you're paying attention, you know what those objective risks are, and you know what the subjective risk is. And if you know that, then you can make a good decision. If you don't know that, you're going to struggle. And so evaluating those things and having that level of risk acceptance and making it a conscious process rather than a lizard brain thing is probably the best way that I serve.
That's awesome. I think we come to realize that nature doesn't really care about us, and so we have to make.
He gives absolutely zero fucks about us.
No, and so we have to. So we finally have nature gives us a very objective view of life that it doesn't have feelings, it doesn't care about us, and so we have to now look back and reflect. Does decisions we make are true decisions, not based off of feelings? And I think that's the greatest thing that nature will give us. So, hey, we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and for being here for us, but especially for leading great people up mountains and leading them safely and having the wherewithal of knowing when to turn back to bring those families home safe and bring those people home safe. So thank you for all your inspiration. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And from a non-climber, I've learned a lot of things that I apply to personal life. I mean, 2 really good ones, especially. And thank you for that, because that's all what this is part of, taking home some wisdom.
Well,
thanks, Chris.
Send my best to Karen if you see her before me. And
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Crackin Backs podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and make sure you follow our Instagram at Crackin Backs Podcast. Catch new episodes every Monday. See you next time.